Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome from Rapiv's team, who is behind the technical support of the webinar, and from myself. For those who doesn't know me, I'm Maria Zlatev, and I'm the project coordinator of We Circular project. This is a project within we organize Smart and Sustainable Business for Women Entrepreneurs training program, which is this today's webinar is actually part of this program. Before we begin, I will let you know with some technical notes. The webinar is being recorded, and the full recording will be available afterwards on the YouTube channel of the project and in the e-learning platform. If you are not yet part of the platform, but you would like to join, please send us your email address via the feedback questionnaires that you're going to receive after the webinar, and we'll be happy to send you invitation, or write us directly to our email office@rapiv.org. I'm using the opportunity that speaking now to introduce you also our next webinar, and kindly to invite you to join also to the next webinar, which is going to be organized on the 18th of November in the afternoon between 4:30 and 6 Central European Time. It will be dedicated on some very interesting topic, violence against women entrepreneurs, and how can 5 principles of empowerment, self-defense, safe lives, and health. Very interesting topic that is going to be presented by our guest speaker, Miss Linda Studbartova from Czech Republic. More information about this session you can already find on our social media channels, and also soon will be uploaded in the training platform. And after this short information about forthcoming initiatives, let's begin. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker, Mr. Fabian Holly, who is a circular economy expert. And he has very strong background in advising companies on sustainable business models and how to transform them and to go towards circularity. But I guess that he can present himself better than I can do. So Fabian, the floor is yours, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on circular business models. As already mentioned, my name is Fabian Holly. I am working as an expert for circular economy at a consulting firm in Austria called EFS Consulting. And yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here with you and to talk about a topic that I strongly believe will fundamentally transform how we think about value creation, innovation, and also sustainability in business. So over the next about 40 to 45 minutes, we will take a closer look on how the circular economy reshapes the way we design, the way we produce, and of course, the way we use products. So we will see how new business models can unlock both economic value, that's very important, and also environmental impact. And why this transformation is not only necessary, but also a full of opportunities. So this session is about more than just recycling or waste reduction. This session is about rethinking the entire logic of our economy, moving from a so-called linear system that just takes and disposes to a more circular one that regenerates and retains value. And yeah, by the end, I hope this session will give you both inspiration and practical insights you can take back into your own organizations, ideally. Yeah, usually I'd like to open my presentations with a quote from Ken Webster. Ken Webster is one of the leading thinkers on the circular economy. He is part of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And he once said, the circular economy gives us the opportunity to build a system that can run in the long term, and the time is right for it to reach scale. And in my opinion, this quote perfectly sets the stage for today's discussion. It reminds us that the circular economy isn't just a sustainability buzzword. It's a systemic opportunity. It's about building an economy that can run in the long term, an economy that doesn't consume itself in the process of creating growth, And Webster's final words, the time is right for it to reach scale. This one really captures where we are today. We already have the technologies, the data, the awareness. We see regulatory pressure and shifting customer expectations. So what's missing now is the decisive action. And that's where the circular business models come into play. Yeah, so let's explore together why this transformation is essential and how companies can benefit from embracing it. Here's a quick overview of what I will be covering today. We will start with the why. Why do we even need a circular economy? We will explore what is wrong with the current linear model and what's driving the global shift towards circularity, from environmental to regulatory and strategic factors. Then, how circularity actually becomes a business opportunity. We will look at 5 core circular business models, and I will show you examples from different industries, from automotive to consumer goods, to make the concept tangible and practical. Yeah, my goal is by the end of this session, you will have a clear understanding of how circular economy thinking can translate into competitive advantage, innovation, and also very important, resilience for your business. Yeah, let's begin. Let's begin with the fundamental question: why do we need the circular economy? So I think you know, for decades, our global economy has followed the same principle. We take materials from nature, turn them into products, use them for a short period, and then throw them away. This is what we call the linear model: take, make, waste. And it has delivered growth, comfort, and prosperity. No doubt about that. But it has also created some serious side effects: resource depletion, pollution, waste accumulation, and dependency on non-renewable materials. So in other words, the system that once fueled our progress is now threatening the very foundation it relies on: our natural resources, our ecosystem, and our climate stability. That's why we need to rethink our economic works. We can no longer afford to operate in a one-way system. We need an economy that regenerates, reuses, and restores value instead of constantly extracting and wasting it. And that's exactly what the circular economy aims to achieve. So, as I just mentioned, the current linear system, take, make, waste, this one is inefficient. As I said, we take the natural resources, we convert them in products, we dispose the products, and they often land in landfills or in initiation plants. So, for example, in Austria, around 90% of these resources follow this linear path. And that means only about 10% are being cycled back to the economy. But beyond this impact, there are also major economic inefficiencies. I will show you on this slide. So, as we take a closer look at the linear economic system, we can clearly see these inefficiencies. It's a model that consumes valuable resources at the one hand and generates massive amounts of waste at the other. So every step of this linear value chain contains some form of loss or waste. So we use non-sustainable materials, both direct and indirect ones that are not renewable or biodegradable. Next one is we lose capacity when products are not used continuously or when the full functionality isn't required. We waste product life when items are replaced prematurely because of new models or minor defects that could have been repaired. And we waste end-of-life value when materials that could be reused or recycled end up being disposed of. And last but not least, on top of that, we lose customer interaction opportunities. So most companies see a product once and then the relationship ends. No maintenance, no service, no upgrade, no take-back program. So not only is the system linear in material flows, but also in customer relationships. So all of these inefficiencies show that the linear model is outdated, both ecologically and economically. It simply doesn't make any sense in a world where resources are scarce and costs are rising. The linear model doesn't just harm the environment, it also destroys value. But the good news is there is another way. The circular economy offers an alternative to this throwaway model. So instead of letting resources flow through the systems only once, the circular economy aims to close this loop. Products, but also components and materials, they are kept in use for as long as possible, maintaining their highest possible value at every stage. So the idea is simple but powerful. Design out of waste, keep materials in use, and regenerate natural systems. So while this so-called linear model goes from take, make, waste, this circular one, it creates loops, like make, use, recycle, and then make again or remake. So it's not about doing less harm. It's about creating a system that is regenerative by design. So by shifting to the circular model, companies can reduce dependency on raw materials, stabilize costs, and open new value streams. And that's all while reducing the environmental footprint. So the circular economy rests on 3 core principles. And these principles are all interconnected. First, it relies on the use of renewable energy, both for production and operation of products. So energy from fossil resources is replaced by renewable alternatives. This also helps to reduce emissions and dependencies on finite resources. Second, it focuses on keeping products, components, and materials in use, and not just once, but continuously, and always at their highest possible value. This involves strategies like repair, remanufacturing, reuse, and recycling, and the other R strategies you may know. And third, it emphasizes the prevention of pollution and waste, designing products and processes in a way that materials can be dismantled, separated, and reused easily. Yeah, so by now, the idea of circularity sounds appealing. But the key question is, why now? Why are companies, policymakers, and investors suddenly paying so much attention to the circular economy? And there are some main drivers that make this topic so relevant today. And I would like to start with environmental sustainability, the need to stay within the planetary boundaries. This slide visually underlines the urgency of our situation. The increasing demand for materials, energy, and products has reached a point where our linear system can no longer sustain it. So we often say that the circular economy is not just a sustainability concept. It's a survival strategy, to be honest. Because if we keep extracting, consuming, and wasting at today's pace, we will soon run out of affordable resources, while also exceeding the planet's ecological limits. That's why this transformation is not optional, it's essential. So let's take a look at the data behind this transformation. The chart here shows the global extraction of natural resources from 1970 to 2024. And as you can see, it has more than tripled from under 40 billion tons to over 120 billion tons per year. And this growth is driven by four main trends. The first one is the increasing consumption per capita. So each person on the planet now consumes around 12 tons of materials every year, compared to just 8 tons in 1970. Second, a strong coupling with economic growth. Material use increases with GDP much faster than population growth. And third, inequality in consumption. The high-income countries use 10 times more resources per person than the low-income countries. And fourth, structural transformation. As the economies industrialize and urbanize, material and energy demand explodes. Yeah, and the result of this overconsumption is that we are pushing our planet far beyond its limits. Around 90% of biodiversity loss is directly linked to the extraction and processing of raw materials. Yeah, same as in Austria, the average use rate in the European Union is only 11.8%. So again, in other words, nearly 90% of what we extract never returns into the cycle. Yeah, and the circular economy helps us to do exactly that. It decouples growth from resource use and turns sustainability into a driver of innovation. So it turns up the 11.8, or it lets the 11.8% rise, and the 90% will fall down. Yeah. So now that we have seen the environmental side, let's turn to a second key driver, a second driver of four, the objectives and regulations. So the governments and the European Union are setting increasingly ambitious targets that will push companies towards circularity. And this main driver, this key driver, isn't just about compliance. This one is about shaping the market of the future. So companies that adapt circularity or circular economy or circular business models early, they will have a competitive advantage. While those that don't, they risk being left behind. So I brought a slide that shows us how many legislative initiatives are now in place or coming into force soon. So we see instruments like the Eco-Design for Sustainable Product Regulation, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and also the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And all of these, and you can see it's that another layer of accountability. They demand transparency about materials, carbon emissions, product life cycles, and they also encourage companies to design for longevity, recyclability, and traceability. So this growing web of policies shows that the circular economy is not only an opportunity, it is becoming a requirement at the end. So in other words, if you want to do business in the European market, you will have to become more circular. So in the end, it's as simple as that. Yeah, let's move on to the third driver, which is the strategic independence. And this one is particularly relevant for Europe. Probably not for the rest of the world, but particularly for Europe. So here you can see a map. And when we look more closely on the map of this slide, we can see how unevenly distributed the world's critical raw materials are. So you can see countries in Africa, in South America, also parts of Asia, they hold the majority of resources like lithium, like cobalt, like the rare earth elements, and all of them are very essential for green technologies. For the batteries we use for electric vehicles, for wind turbines, for the electric vehicles as a whole. Yeah, and so this geographic concentration means that Europe faces serious supply chain vulnerabilities. So even if just one of these regions experiences political instability or export restrictions or even natural disruptions, production and production companies in Europe could easily be affected immediately. So therefore, building circularity into our industrial system isn't just about recycling. It is about maintaining control over our resources by reusing materials, by refurbishing components, by recycling end-of-life products. With these ways, we can dramatically reduce import dependency and strengthen our strategic autonomy. So in this sense, the circular economy becomes a form of industrial insurance, protecting us from external shocks while keeping valuable materials in use. Yeah, and last but definitely not least, the fourth and final driver of circular transformation is economic potential. So the circular economy is not only good for the environment, it's a major source of growth and competitiveness. And across industries, we can see companies improving profitability by recovering markets, extending product lifetimes, or offering services instead of products. And this shift is measurable. So on this slide, you can see a graph which illustrates the growth trajectory of the circular economy market. The circular economy market volume grew from around about 150 billion euros in that's in German, sorry for that. It's 150 billion euros in 2020 to an expected 260 billion euros by 2030. So that is an annual increase of roughly 6% or more than 80% overall within this single decade. So it's a clear evidence that sustainability and profitability can go hand in hand if circular thinking is applied strategically. And the same trend appears in the broader green tech sector, which is projected to reach almost 10 trillion euros in global revenue by 2030. So that includes industries like energy efficiency, renewable power, sustainable mobility, and circular production. Yeah, you can see this on this slide. So this market grows faster than most other conventional industries. So this momentum reflects how circular thinking has moved from the margins to the mainstream of industrial strategy. And as technology evolves, especially digital twins, AI-driven maintenance, for example, material tracking systems, this economic potential will even continue to expand. So when we talk about circular economy, we are not talking about cost or constraint. We are talking about value creation. So I brought an example from the automotive sector. I would say this industry is an industry where circularity has already proving its worth. So, for instance, 50% of heavy trucks are resold after being reconditioned, and almost half of these undergo full remanufacturing. So take-back programs achieve 93% material reuse, and the recycling value of a single truck can reach up to 40,000 euros with a 95% recyclability rate. And these are not theoretical figures. They are real business outcomes. So circular approaches lead to cost reduction, extended lifetime, and new service-based revenue streams. So when people say circular economy is expensive, the data tells a different story. It shows that companies embracing these circular principles are already more resilient, more efficient, and more profitable. Yeah, I hope now that we have understood the why, let's turn to the how. How can businesses actually make the circular economy work? And the key lies in circular business models that are designed to keep resources circulating, value retained, and customers engaged throughout the life cycle. They can be implemented individually or in combination, depending on a company's value chain and customer structure. And they are not limited to specific sectors. So whether you are in manufacturing, in retail, in mobility, the logic of these circular business models remains the same, keeping materials in the loop while creating new forms of value. So according to Peter Lacey, we can classify the circular business models into 5 categories, which are spread along the value chain. The 5 are circular inputs on the left side, resource recovery, product as a service in the middle, product use extension on the right-hand side, and last but not least, sharing platforms. And together, these 5 circular business models represent the backbone of a circular economy. So they can move us from a product-based logic to a service and performance-based one. A logic where value is generated continuously rather than a single transaction. So let's begin with the first model, the circular inputs model. So this model focuses, as the name says, on materials that go into production. So instead of using virgin finite resources, companies replace them with renewable, recycled, or highly recyclable alternatives. So circular inputs make it possible to avoid waste before it even occurs. By choosing the right materials from the start, ones that can safely return to the cycle, we minimize environmental impact and reduce dependency on scarce raw materials. Yeah, but this requires collaboration, as you can imagine, along the supply chain. So suppliers, designers, manufacturers, they all need to align on material standards and transparency. But once they have implemented those standards, circular inputs can drastically improve sustainability performance, and it can reduce exposure to volatile commodity markets. So I brought a good example for this circular business, for circular inputs, the company called Reduce, a company that produces sustainable noise barriers. And their barriers are made from reeds, from thermal wood, from clay. All those are renewable regional materials that are 100% ecological and also fully biodegradable. They offer excellent sound insulation and a lifespan of over 20 years, making them both functional and sustainable. So at the end of their life, the materials can be returned to nature without even generating hazardous waste. So even more impressively, the barriers contribute to biodiversity, it's a side fact, since their natural cavities provide habitats for insects. So this case shows how the use of circular inputs doesn't have to compromise performance. To be honest, it can actually improve it. So sustainable materials can deliver technical, environmental, and even social benefits simultaneously. Yeah, coming to the next circular business model, resource recovery. It complements circular inputs perfectly. So while circular inputs prevent waste at the beginning of the value chain, this business model, resource recovery, closes the loop at the end. So it focuses on capturing the embedded value of materials or energy from discarded products, byproducts, or waste streams, and reintroducing them into production. So this often involves advanced collection systems, sorting technologies, of course, and partnerships with some recyclers. But when done properly, it can significantly reduce material costs and lower a company's environmental footprint, as you may know. So the beauty of this model is that waste becomes a resource, a new feedstock for production rather than a burden to dispose of. So also for this circular business model, I brought the example. The company Intra Automobile Recycling So Indra operates a network of certified recycling centers, especially in France, that handle the end-of-life processing of vehicles. So their approach is holistic. They dismantle, they sort, and they recycle every possible component. So around 95% of each vehicle materials are recovered and reused. They also recondition between 20 and 30 parts per car, which are then sold for professional repair and maintenance. So beyond the environmental impact, Indra also tackles illegal vehicle dismantling by ensuring all processes meet strict environmental and safety standards. So this case proves that resource recovery can create jobs, can regenerate revenue, and reduce waste all at once. A perfect example of circular economy in practice, I would say. Yeah, the third model, the third circular business model, it is called product as a service. Sometimes it is abbreviated as PaaS or PaaS. In this model, the company retains ownership of the product and only sells its function or performance. So customers don't buy the product itself, they pay for the benefit it provides. And this changes everything. It changes incentives, it changes relationships, and it changes revenue structures. So when the producer remains the owner, they have a natural interest in ensuring durability, maintainability, and efficient material use, of course. So products are designed for longevity, easy repair, and modular upgrades. Yeah, a well-known example is the Rolls-Royce Total Care. You may know this example in the aviation industry, where airlines pay per flight hour instead of purchasing engines. So let's take a closer look on how this one works. Yeah, as I said, instead of selling aircraft engines, Rolls-Royce sells flight hours. Airlines don't own the engines. They pay for engine power as a service. And Rolls-Royce remains responsible for maintenance, responsible for performance, and also for reliability throughout the entire life cycle of this engine. So this shifts the business logic of Rolls-Royce completely. The manufacturer now benefits from producing long-lasting, efficient, and repairable engines rather than selling replacements. So up to 95% of a used engine can be recycled, and about half of all recovered materials are reused in new components or in a new engine. So for the customer, this means predictable cost and maximum uptime. For Rolls-Royce, it means stable long-term revenue and valuable data insights from continuous operation. And for the planet, you can imagine it means fewer resources consumed per hour of service delivered. So to summarize it, it's a win-win-win situation, economically, environmentally, and operationally. Yeah, the fourth of the 5 circular business models is the product use extension, which is essentially making products last longer. The idea of it is simple. Design products that can be repaired, can be refurbished, can be upgraded, can be resold, can be the whole R strategies instead of being replaced. So extending the useful life of products delays resource extraction and reduces waste while also creating new business opportunities for maintenance and remanufacturing. So this model often requires rethinking the entire design process, as you can imagine. Products must be easy to disassemble, spare parts need to be available, repair services should be accessible, but when done all of those steps well, it builds customer loyalty, reduces costs, and lowers environmental impact simultaneously. So in short, longevity becomes the new efficiency. Yeah, to make the product use extension practical, we can refer to the so-called 10R strategies. I think you know them, a hierarchy of actions for circular value creation. And they can They can range from the R0, the so-called refuse, which means avoiding unnecessary products, to R9, the so-called recover, energy recovery from materials that can't be reused. And in between, we find familiar strategies like reuse, like repair, like refurbish, manufacture, repurpose, recycle, etc. So the earlier the action in this hierarchy, the greater its environmental and economic benefit. For example, repairing or reusing a product preserves far more value than recycling its materials. So these R strategies serve as a toolbox for companies to identify where and how they can intervene to close the loop most effectively. So this slide shows how the different R strategies map across the entire value chain. From raw material procurement to manufacturing to retail and finally to end-of-life management. So each actor in the value network has a role to play. Suppliers can rethink materials, manufacturers can design for repair or manufacture, and recyclers handle the final recovery steps, R8 and R9. So the key insight here is that circularity is not limited to one company or one process. It's a systemic collaboration requiring transparency, logistics, and information sharing across multiple partners, as you can see here on the slide. Yeah, and also for this business model, I brought an example. So one of the most iconic examples comes from Patagonia. The program of Patagonia is called Worn Wear Program, and Patagonia buys back used outdoor clothing, repairs this clothing, and resells it through a dedicated platform. So customers receive vouchers for trade-ins and can purchase repaired or recycled items at a lower price. And the environmental results are remarkable. Environmental product life reduces resources use and CO2 emissions by around 60%, while also saving large amounts of water, of course. Economically, Patagonia benefits from additional revenue streams and stronger customer loyalty. And culturally, the brand raises awareness about conscious consumption. It is proving that sustainability can be aspirational and profitable at the same time. I brought another example, another excellent industrial example, the company Lawrence, a company that produces measuring instruments. So when the devices reach the end of their calibration period, they are returned, dismantled, and completely reconditioned. So Lawrence applies a design for manufacturing approach, what means that they ensure new product lines are modular, easy to disassemble, and updatable through software. So this process saves between 30 and 80% of the energy and raw materials compared with producing new devices, particularly brass and electronic components. So customers receive high quality, they receive certified instruments at lower cost, while the company benefits from material savings and stable long-term relationships. So it is a perfect demonstration of how circular design and industrial excellence can reinforce one another. Yeah, and the final fifth business model, it is called sharing platforms. This one is a model that optimizes product utilization. So instead of every customer owning their own product, several users share access. This can apply to vehicles, you may know, vehicle sharing tools, but also office spaces or even clothing. So sharing models reduce idle time, lower production demand, and create entirely new service ecosystems. But you need digital platforms, because the digital platforms play a key role by connecting users, managing managing trust, and facilitating transactions. So when products are shared, they are used more intensively, which means fewer items need to be produced overall. So that translates directly into resource savings and emission reductions. And I also brought an example for this model. which is, I think, a great example of a sharing platform. It is called GoMore, a peer-to-peer car sharing service. So private car owners can rent out their vehicle to others through an online platforms. And this makes perfect sense when you realize that most of the cars sit idle for around about 23 hours a day. By enabling shared use, GoMore increases utilization rates dramatically while helping reducing the total number of cars on the road. So this lowers emissions, relieves urban congestions, and provides additional income for car owners. So it's a classic circular economy win, maximizing the use of existing assets instead of producing new ones. Yeah, and with that, we have reached the end of today's session. We have looked at why our current linear system no longer works, explored the drivers behind the circular transformation, and discovered 5 powerful business models that can make circularity profitable. So to summarize the 45 minutes briefly, circular economy is about keeping value in motion. It is driven by sustainability, regulation, independence, and economics, and it realized through business innovation, not just environmental ambition. Yeah, and if you like to explore these topics further, you can find more insights in our EFS white papers or in our business and circularity podcasts. But I have to mention, those are in German, unfortunately. Yeah, these resources provide deeper dives into the topics I just presented, from regulatory frameworks to practical implementation strategies. Yeah, and of course, feel free to reach out directly via the QR code here on the right-hand side. And so thank you very much for your attention. I wish you an inspiring evening, and let's keep driving the shift from linear to circular together. Thank you.
Thank you very much for presenting to our participants here the basics, and also to put some insights on how to apply the circular principles in the real business. And if somebody has some questions, of course, maybe we can keep some minutes and to discuss, or maybe to ask something related with what you heard, or maybe this presentation inspired you for something and you can want to share with us. Please feel free to do it now. You can directly unmute your microphones or raise your hand, whatever you prefer. Or maybe it's too late. People are tired after work.
Yeah.
And yes, I really hope that this webinar will serve as an inspiration and to foster our participants and to change their business in a way that they contribute not only to environment, but also to all of us. If you have some questions, maybe you can send it later in the chat and maybe we can respond to them. Thank you once again for being with us. Thank you, Fabian, for accepting our invitation.
You're welcome.
And I also, on behalf of our people, would like to say to all of you, good night and enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.